Welcome to the Miniatures Paintbrush. Today we're going to build an AMT 1963 Corvette Split Window Coupe, and it's a 1/24 scale model. My stepson saw this in the store and said, "Hey, you build things. Can you build this?" I said, "Sure." And I use all the techniques, tricks, and tips to create this model, and I kind of port them over to my miniature hobby as well. So there's a lot of different techniques that I use here that you can use in all different aspects of modeling. And painting is a journey for me, so I'm learning new things and I'm always up for the challenge. Well, I hope you enjoy. All right, so we're going to build this Corvette. I've seen actually one of these. It's pretty cool to watch. They removed the split window because it became a hazard to look back. So the only 1 year of the split window coupe in 1963. So the first thing I want to talk about is thinning paint for your airbrush. Now, everybody says have a milky consistency, and the reason why they say that is because most paints have different consistencies to begin with. Even in the same brand model, different colors would have a different consistency. So you kind of liquefy it similarly to a milk kind of product. And in order to thin it, what I use is Liquitex Flow Aid 10-to-1 drop with water to mix the flow of the paint so it can flow smoothly. And slow dry, I use also Liquitex Slow Dry, 10 drops of water to 1 drop of slow dry, the same kind of mixture with the Flow Aid. And I use them separately. Usually when I use an airbrush, I use a slow dry. When I hand brush things, I kind of use a Flow Aid, but you can use them interchangeably. In this case, I used a little bit of both. And then I mixed some water just for good measure. And the mixture that I got was pretty light. So you can do really light coats that you can build up slowly. And that allows and affords the most control. Now, what it doesn't allow or afford is time, because it's a very time-consuming process. The thinner the paint is, the more time it's going to take. So if you're speed doing this for somebody who's going to, I don't know, if you just wanted to speed through this, you can, but I mean, part of the hobby is taking your time and really enjoying the process. So I take my time, and I dilute even my my base coats, my primers, and I slowly bring it up to control, the most optimal control I could possibly have. Now, I have a spray booth here. I made myself, actually with the help of my father-in-law and my uncle-in-law. I have a great family. And they helped me. I put the plans together, and yeah, on the fly, it was pretty cool. So now mixing the paint. When I mix it, I use these little dowels, I guess I got from a wood pile. I think it was Michael's where I got that from. You can get it places like Walmart. They have some wood pile sections. Hobby Lobby also. You can get it from AC Moore and all those arts supplies and craft stores. So once you've gotten the mixture down, you kind of spray it on either test paper or something like that, just to make sure that's nice and even. You see it coming out light on the bottom of there, that spray pad, I guess, the newspaper that I put down. And I test it on there, and I see how it's flowing. And then I know to add either more water or less. And what I do is clean the tip off, because the tip does get dry. And then I start spraying. Now when you spray, you want to go from past the model to the center of the model, then past the model again. You'll see what I'm doing here. Like broad strokes, that's it. Broad strokes left and right. Okay, let's see it all primed up. All right, here it is. It's all primed up. And as you can see, doing it slowly, it took it took some time to do. But look how smooth it looks. Like, this is a very optimal palette for you to add your color to, and which I do shortly after. Now, unfortunately, the film, while I was recording, cut off while I was putting on the base coat. I'll show you what I used in just a bit. and then I'm going to try to build up a gloss coat. Now, base coating can be done from a rattle can or from an airbrush. I do like the airbrush because it does yield such great results. So I like Stynylrez because it really, like, even it's hard to mess up, because it kind of self-levels and it's sandable. So here's the model painted. I used the Tamiya a rattle can, silver leaf, to paint it. And there, I started with that Stynylrez, love that Stynylrez, and then I used that silver leaf to paint it. There it is. Tamiya colors. These are very small. They're kind of expensive. But this is the color that my son-in-law picked out specifically. So I wanted to specifically use that color, although I had comparables. And then I tried spray lacquers. Now, lacquers, when using it, are amazing, but you really make sure that you have a nice base coat because lacquers can tend to melt plastic. So as long as you're base coated and painted and it's well, you can generally use lacquers. Now, when I do any kind of coat with gloss, what I do is I put a mist coat on, which you just saw there, really quickly. Just mist it on, sort of like prepping it and getting a preparatory coat for the thicker layers that you're going to put on later. And you can get a really good gloss and high gloss coat using spray cans. So that would be, some people say, oh, you can only use airbrush, and that's a myth. You can get a really nice shine. So after a mist coat, what you got to do is your secondary coat, which is tacky coat. And finally, you kind of just pour it straight on. Yeah. Now, the only thing you have to worry about when putting these coats on is drip lines. So be careful and conscious of that, not to put too much on at one time. So that's why I do it. Again, when you're spraying, you want to go the length of the body. Don't concentrate on one area for too long because that's how drip lines occur. Later on, I'm going to put some All-Clad 2 lacquer to build this up as well. So I use spray can, and then the other, I use it through an airbrush so we can see a little bit of a difference. So this is yielding a pretty good shine. You can see on my glove there that it's really shining. But I'll get a close-up on what it looks like. And there you go. There it is. This is from a can gloss coat, and it looks pretty nice. I mean, it doesn't look bad at all. While I was airbrushing, and while I was while I was spray canning, I really airbrushed for too long. That terminology sticks. Dust can get onto your paint job, and that's going to happen. So what you do is you kind of polish those things out. You use abrasive polishes. Tamiya, I do like their products. They do have these compounds. There's a coarse one, and you're gradually going to go up from coarse to a fine compound. And then you have your finishing compound right there. And you do those right before you put like wax or anything like that, like automotive wax on it, to really bring out the luster of it. Alrighty. I sand between my coats. Dust always settles. I use different kinds of glues. I use Tamiya extra thin cement, which is really nice. It actually melts the plastic together. So you have unprimered pieces there, and I'm going to melt and fuse them together using this process. I also use Gorilla Glue. You can use other, I forgot the name of acrylite or something like that. It's super glue. You can use different kinds. I use Gorilla Glue. I saw it on sale. I picked it up. There's a couple. Loctite puts out another one as well. I built a car with Loctite. It was really cool. It was a Loctite car using Loctite glue. So with extra thin cement, you need to be careful not to put too much on, because it does fuse the plastic together and melts the plastic. And you might, if you put too much on, melt your actual model and details, which is something you don't want to do. So I like the extra thin cement because it actually has a little brush that you can put on there, and you can apply it that way. So after putting the model together, the engine together, I use red from Wicked Colors to do that, and then I use here natural steel to go on the transmission. And there's that red from Wicked Color. I do like that color that it actually lays down there, and I'm not very brand loyal when it comes to paint. I use all different kinds. And you can see that some of the parts come in chrome, and the chrome is really, really shiny. I later dull that shine down. I use non-oil. But I noticed that on the underside of the model that the exhaust pipes, they weren't connecting at all. Like, they were just hanging there in the midair. I'll show you what I mean. You see how they just fold right in, and they're not even touching. They're not connected. So I thought that looked really cheesy, and I definitely needed to do something about it. So I marked off the areas about where I wanted to cut off. I took some clippers and I cut it off, and then I sanded it down with a sanding stick just to remove the pieces that I didn't want. And later on, I was going to add my own piece into it. Like, I was going to add a connector piece, which I'll show you in a bit. But for now, let's get rid of these non-connecting manifolds. Any metal file would do. But remember, first you can clip them off and then use the file. Alrighty, there they are. They're completely down. A little rough there. I need a little more sanding. But I clipped them off, and they're pretty straight now. Now they don't fold into the body, and now I can add connector pieces to the manifold, so this way they connect the exhaust system. Let's see. Yep, that looks good. Now I just need to get those two pieces, and it'll be perfect. Let's move on to the wheels. Now they have a couple of wheeled options here. My stepson wanted a more original look, classic look. So I looked up some pictures on the internet of the wheels of an original 1963 Corvette, and they look like, I guess, like a dirty aluminum in the middle and then chrome on the outside. So usually what I would do here is just throw the wash on willy-nilly and then dry brush all the chrome areas. But since it's already in a high shine chrome, kind of want to use that. So what I did was take my time and slowly build up the wheels. And what I mean by that is I took non-oil from Games Workshop, and I slowly used a very fine brush. I think I used a zero brush there, and slowly put some non-oil in the middle there. And I found out that non-oil, it dulls out the shine. It makes it almost like a dirty kind of aluminum shine to it when you're applying it to this kind of chrome. So I thought that was really neat, and it would definitely suit my purposes for the wheels. Now, the one thing you need to do with this is you take your time. I find this very peaceful. I always dedicate some time. I try to dedicate a little bit of time every day to go and utilize this time for modeling and returning peace to my life. Some people meditate. I like to model. It's time well spent, and I love creating things. And I think it looks really cool. So when you go through this once, you may have to go back and add a little more than on oil to the pieces to make sure that it's uniform coverage. And you're going to do all four wheels. See, I did two on the left there, and now these I'm going to finish off, and I'll finish those off camera, before and after. There they are. Now I come to the rubber wheels, which is neat that this kit comes with rubber wheels. I mentioned that in the unboxing video. But it does have some flashing to the rubber. Now, some people use the tip of a hobby knife to cut those out. But I tend to do things a little bit differently. I found that using the butt end of the sharp part of an X-Acto knife works better as a guide when cutting off this particular round piece to the model. Now, you have to be careful. That goes without saying. You can cut your fingers easily. So just be careful and take your time with this step if you choose to do it this way. Comes right off. All right, so next what we're going to do is we're going to dry fit the wheels and put them on and then finally glue them. But before we do that, I wanted to kind of weather this wheel here. And what I mean by weather is, I mean by making it look aged. So simply by filing it down around the edges, scuffing it up, it looks like it's been driven. It looks like that this particular model has actually been on the road a little bit at least. And that goes for a little bit of realism. Now I wasn't going for a total realistic effect. I tried, but this enhanced that. Next up, what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of some of the flashing that's on the inside of the wheel. Now this I scoop up like I scoop melons. I do like melons. It's just going along the edges there and just taking off the extra bits. Be very careful. It's a brand new knife here, so you can really mar your wheels. Again, taking your time and doing it slowly and slowly cutting off a little more and dry fitting and making sure that everything fits well and cutting out some more, and that is key. Yep. And it comes up really easily. You can't use the back of the blade. You do have to use the front of the blade for this. But I had no problems whatsoever. The only issue I think I would have is gluing the wheels on to the actual the rubber tire, because they seem a little loose fitting. And putting the glue on can be a little bit tricky. You want to coat the inside of the wheel first and then drop them in. And there you go. Looks great. All right, next I want to talk a little bit about sub-assemblies, where I take pieces off the sprue. Some people paint on the sprue. I can't see that. I'm going to use Styrene to base coat these pieces that I took off the sprue. And the reason why I take them off the sprue is when you clip them off the sprue, there's a piece that was attached to the sprue that you need to kind of clean up and sand down and make look uniform to the rest of the piece, so it doesn't look like there's this big old tab that you clipped off at the end of that piece, and it looks a little more like a car than a toy. So what I do here is I use poster tack. You can get those at any garden variety store, and I just mount all the pieces that are going to go flat black onto these poster tack on the pill bottles. I have a video about pill bottles as well. You may want to check that out. Also, it just really makes it easier to hold all these small little pieces. Again, this is diluted. I did it off camera, so I increased the pressure here. This time I went to a higher pressure, so I keep the airbrush further away from the model so I can mist on the color, possibly giving it a little bit of texture, not too much, because this Styrene is self-leveling. It's pretty cool. I try to orange peel some things certain times, but not with Styrene, which is, I mean, it's great for me. Unless you want to add some texture to it, you may want to look at different kind of primers. But again, if you want to have that orange peel, just keep it far away, and that'll do it. But this is definitely a testament to the Styrene self-leveling properties. which are really, really great and come really handy for modelers like me who sometimes fumbles about and gets a little clumsy. So I really do love the Stynylrez. I think it does add so much to modeling and to painting pieces. And this went along, I mean, it came out so smoothly, and I slowly built it up. And just using this process makes it so much easier to handle your products and the pieces and to paint them more efficiently without touching them, without getting them wet. Of course, there are the pieces on the underside that do not get painted by that technique when you use poster tack. You see the 4 bits right there. Yep, I have them 4. And I hand paint those. And so again, the self-leveling properties help out with that Stynylrez. Love it. But these pieces in particular had 2 options. You can have a higher rolling suspension or a lower suspension. I would suspect that you'd have to go the higher in the back if you wanted to make a drag car, and the tires wouldn't fit if it was all up. But I do like a lower stance, so that's what I went with. Now I'm going to attach the wheels to this using the top hole, which will mean that it'll actually sit lower. And you always want to dry fit these things, especially with wheels, because if you get it wrong, the wheels will be wobbly and the stance will be off. So take your time with this. Again, I think I've said that so many times, but it's so true. Rush jobs here, it won't pay off in the end, but you're taking your time does. I mean, the finish will be just where you want it to be. Now with this kit, what you do have to do is apply some pressure, which is nerve-wracking for me because I'm always afraid, oh my goodness, I'm going to break the model. It's going to be terrible. I'm not going to have a video. My stepson's going to be really upset. But with this, you do actually have to add some pressure. So I put the center cap right there, and that's where I pushed it in, and you see it like fall into place. It doesn't snap or click, so you got to know when to stop, and you don't want to push it in too far. But as long as it's rolling, then you got it right. I really like how the Nun oil made that wheel look. I think it's pretty cool. I don't like that there's a bar in the middle that you can see in the engine bay when you put it on. So I'm going to put the dry fit the engine to show you how the bar for this particular model shows through. And it's the bar where the wheels are. I'm going to hold out with my finger, and from the bottom, it looks perfect. Look, it looks great. But, and it rolls with the engine, and that's good. But on top, you see the bar going through. And there's very little you can do with that. I guess you could paint it with primer. All right, now that the wheels are together and put on, let's look at that suspension. Let's move back to the suspension, and I'm going to use that natural steel, which is a common theme. And I do like Vallejo paints for their metallics. There are other metallics that I use. I decanted some really chrome sprays, and decanting will be in another video. And I use those. Those are alcohol based, but I wanted more control with the acrylic paints here from Vallejo. So I didn't thin these out because if you're painting metallics on these blacks right here, it can be tricky, and I wanted like really thick coverage, so I just went for it. And I knew that I didn't have to get the lines perfect because I could always touch up the ends with some more Stynylrez, and I wanted a thick coat so it'd be uniform, and I was going to weather it anyway, so it was going to dull out the shine, so some pitting here and there wouldn't have been a big deal. So I didn't thin down the paints on this one. GW fans, you know about thinning your paints. This is one instance where I didn't to allow that coverage. So there are instances where you might need to do that. And here it is complete. I think it came out pretty well. I do like the way it came out. Again, you have those little bits on the side where, clumsy me, I overdid it there, or overbrush, I guess you can say, instead of overspray. But really easily remedied with some Styrene Res that I paint on. There it is. I'm still showing that bottle so much. But it's a great product. Next, just to add some details, and I'm going to show you how I do the Firewall, or adding small details. Simply a drop of paint on the brush. You're loading it very lightly, and you're almost doing very small strokes without stabbing. Being very careful here. And as you can see, just adding those little details will bring out and pick out pieces. It's not really dry brushing, not really wet brushing. It's somewhere in between. Moist brushing, I guess. But that's a technique that works. When I was a kid, I used to use little screwdrivers. I used to load some paint on a screwdriver and just tap it on top of where I wanted it to be. And that technique worked for me as well. But, I'm always looking to improve my brush strokes, so I'm always using a brush, or trying to. And there it is, the Firewall with a whole bunch of details picked out. I didn't go crazy with the variety of color there, because it's trying to make it as uniform as possible in the engine bay. I wanted the engine to stand out, especially that the red block for the engine, the Chevy red block for the engine. So looks really good. Here's an inspection. And now let's move on to the interior. All right, so this time I use crimson, not just red, but crimson red, which is different from wicked red. Very important to know that. Each one of those have a little catalyst on the inside, a little rattle ball that kind of like you can shake up. I add little rattle balls to all of my paints. Just an agitator, I guess that's the better terminology. And with these wicked paints, you use the wicked reducer. I found that I get better results with this. I've tried other ways to reduce it, and I guess there are other ways to reduce it, but I haven't really found the optimal way than to buy the reducer. So I actually use the reducer for these applications when I'm using the wicked colors. And these are airbrush ready paints, so not too much reducing is needed. Again, using the dowels from Woodpile to mix up the paint. And that's the consistency you kind of want, And blow it out, test it out, using a higher pressure. I think I went to 20 psi for this, and I usually hit around 15. So I'm going 20. I just wanted more paint, more coverage to occur. So yeah, and I primed them white underneath. I used a white Styrene Res primer to really have that red pop out, have a light red texture to it. Now the floors are textured, so I didn't really go for adding flocking to the base of the floor. I could have. Again, light coats with the reducer. You don't want to have any running because that'll really show up. And here is the portion finished. I think it looks great. I was thinking about using flocking, but I didn't go that route with that. So that crimson really differentiates. It's not just plain red. You see it's a little bit darker in color than red, which is exactly what I was going for. Next, I want to do the dashboard as well. And I did this in 2 coats. The second coat I didn't put on the YouTube channel. Again, this is 3 weeks of painting, so I kind of reduced it as much as I possibly could to all the componentries. Everything I do, I usually put a second coat on it, or I dabble around with it off camera, because if I put everything on camera, we would have like a 5-hour video at least, and kind of want to trim it and edit it out as much as I possibly could, but still give you the techniques, tricks, and tips that I use to actually assemble this. So I guess bare bones. All in all, I do like Wicked colors, and I would recommend them if you're using larger areas. I do like the way they do have a gloss sheen to them, so you may want to use a matte varnish if you want to tone that down. And here are all the pieces, all painted up and ready for detailing. I'm going to let that dry, and I'm going to go back to the bench, and I'm going to look at the body. Okay. Now, I wanted to try, before I did a rattle can gloss coat, now I want to try some All Clad 2, which is highly recommended from modelers. There's a modeler around my area. He's also quite the artist, an airbrush painter. He's, I guess, a mentor. And I can't wait to see him and talk models soon. And he recommended All Clad 2. It's like a metallizer, really, but it works great as clear gloss coat. And he recommended to use that mist coat first, and then a tacky coat, and then finally putting in that, as rich as you want it kind of coat. Now, after this, I do recommend that you give it at least 24 hours to dry. Lacquer takes time to dry. I think I left this dry for a week before I attended to it. Next, after which I want to scribe. I wanted to darken the panel lines, and I did this using a Micron 0.005 brush. So it's a tiny, tiny tip. And I picked that up. I think it was AC Moore. If not, it was Hobby Lobby. And I picked up a set of them. It comes with black and other colors as well. And that does very well for very, very tiny details. That definitely helps. I've even used it for miniature eyes, if you really want to get in there. And just put a dot in, and you are afraid of that brush, which I have been. Go for Micron, man. It's pretty cool stuff. And you can, again, take everything I say with a grain of salt. Your mileage may vary with a lot of different things. So, but I'm telling you what I use, and I really do like the results. Again, it always comes down to your personal preference and what you like. But you can see here that these panel lines, I think they look great, scribed in, and then using these Micron pen to do it. I do want to use, next time I have these panel lines to fill out, I do have a Vallejo product, a wash from Vallejo that I'd like to try out. So maybe next time, but this time I didn't see where I can have an access point where I wouldn't muck it up, and I was kind of afraid to muck it up, so I went precise, and I used the Micron pen. And Micron pen is great for a lot of different applications. As you can see, that it does a really, really great job here for those panel lines, and it really, really works well. And look at the precise control that you really have. And I am terrified of making these little mistakes. It was a little nerve-wracking, but if you took your time, it really, really works out very, very well. Yep, right down. That portion right there gets covered later with some bare metal foil, which I'll tell you how to use in just a bit in that product as well. So I've collected a lot of Micron pens over the years, and I have different sizes, and I use them for a lot of different applications. Now, using the Micron pen makes it look like the doors open, even though they don't. You know, that black to it, like, these doors open? Gives that 3D effect, which I really, really like. I'm going to shut the lights off here and check out what it looks like in a yellow light and your standard light, and it looks really great. I really do like it. And I bought quite a few of these Micron pens, and they're awesome. They even have paintbrushes that I have yet to use, and I'm playing around with, and I have a collection there. Stadler also puts out some notables when it comes to markers like this. But yeah, I have a lot of different colors, and I can play around with it for different applications. In the future, miniatures paintbrush. No, yeah. Now I also did the headlights as well. And there it is. It's all finished up, and you see the red, white, and blue. It was on the bottom of the 1-to-1 car, 1-1 scale. That's the real car. And here I am with the Micron red. I added some blue, and I'm just gonna lightly dab that in. Again, it's I'm using 0.005 and being really, really gentle while putting on those details for the emblems. Now, the only thing I haven't seen, and maybe you guys can help me out here, is a silver Micron 0.005. I'm looking for that. So if you guys in the comments you can leave where I can find one, that would be awesome, because I didn't do some of the emblem work silver because of that. I was intimidated, but I did get the red down. I guess at some point in time, if I do find it, I can actually finish that off, but I'm not worried about it right now. I think it looks great. Okay, the next portion here, masking. I use my standard blue masking tape for this application, and I cut it close to the edge. I think it's 3M. I don't know. I've used frog tape before as well. And what you do here is you cut out a piece of the tape, and then you got to put it. Generally, you got to put a little bit too much on your model, and just make sure it's pretty much lined up and smooth on, and it goes on relatively well. I mean, there are Tamiya tapes out there that you can use, and there's a one bendy one which I just bought, which I can't wait to use actually. But for this purpose here, for the interior, I mean, I looked it up, and I saw the 1-to-1, and I saw the interior roof line, and they were all red in the inside, and I kind of want to mimic that. So I was like, oh boy, I just painted the car, so time to mask stuff off. And there you go. Once you mask it off, you want to cut around the edges. Very sharp X-Acto blade for this, but don't go too heavy. You don't want to gouge stuff out and leave marks all over. So basically what I'm going to do is I want to make sure I seal the windows, and I'm going to use an airbrush to get in the all the other places on the interior that I want. But you can see there, it looks pretty good. It looks pretty masked off. Next, I use the airbrush, and now I use a very low pressure. I think I used anywhere like 10 to 12. I think I used 12 psi. Which means more dry tip, but at the same time more control, and I really wanted the control. Now what you're supposed to do with masking tape is kind of like hit the edges of the masking tape and let that dry a little bit, and then you can start pouring in, because then if not, it'll definitely bleed through. You don't want that. So again, mist coats on the edges first, and then I let it have it. And again, low psi, so this way you don't have any overspray. And that's what I was really, really afraid of, because there I have a nice gloss coat and everything else, and yeah, overspray is not what you're looking for, so you have to be super careful. I also masked the taillights, so this way it wouldn't come out the back, and the lights in the back, which were holes. So I masked that as well. I did not mask the engine bay compartment at all, so I just had to be really, really careful to do that. But I mean, the result you'll see in a minute. It came out phenomenally. I mean, really did come out very well. Now there are some edges to this that I left, and they were silver, and I hand painted those again with that wicked crimson. But all in all, you got that red interior, and there's a result. I mean, you can see through the windows that it's red underneath, and that's exactly how the one-to-one car is, red underneath. And that's the effect I was going for. Anything more than that, it was like no big deal. But it really came out well. See that? Yeah, awesome. And you can see like none of the overspray came on the body. So, I mean, amazing. I couldn't be more happier about that. So, that really worked out well. If you try it, just be careful. Build it up. Take your time. All right, there it is. It's back on the stand. And these stands are from Tamiya as well. They have two stands as a painting stand. Really, really great. You look up Tamiya's products, and they're amazing. Now I'm doing a bit of tutorial inside this of bare metal foil. It's the first time I've ever used it, and I was really excited to try it. I read some articles on how to apply it. I subscribe to Scale Auto Magazine, and I subscribe to Scale Model Magazine, which are two different ones. One has a little more war and sci-fi, while the other one is just specifically cars and tips and tricks, and that really helps me out and helps me grow as a painter. And they're not as expensive as, some of the GW magazines and other places. So, I don't know if I can afford a $90 subscription to a magazine. That's a bit much. And honestly, I'd rather buy more models than to get a magazine for $90. $20, $30, okay. Fine, I'll bite the bullet. But $90 is a bit expensive for 12 issues. It's basically paying full price, I guess. All right, so you always use a new blade when you come to this. You kind of want to measure out, and I use a transparent ruler, which I love. I got that at Hobby Lobby. And you cut a little larger than the area that you need. There I am with that brand new X-Acto blade, and it's cutting out perfectly. You only get one sheet of this, so you kind of don't want to crumple it up, and it's actually metal. It's a thin metal plate that has stickiness on one side. So you can bend it and you can crease it. And what you want is one whole piece, because you don't want overlapping. You kind of just want one solid piece to go around the trim. That's what we're going to do. We're going to do the front window, and we're going to do the back two split window in the back as well. I looked at the one-to-one. I didn't see any chrome on the side windows, so I'm not going to bother with that. Again, stepson said, want to make it as realistic as possible, so I try to make it as realistic as possible, although I'm a fantasy miniature painter, and I kind of like to add a little fantasy into everything that I build, but that's just me. You have to look for it. There's a bare metal foil. I'm going to lay it on the entire area, again, larger than what I need. Place it, trying to make it real even, and just smooth it out and let that tackiness take over. All right, but I don't want to smooth it all out with my fingers. So what I use is a cotton swab, Q-tip, I guess, and I'm gonna smooth that over with the Q-tip as well. Now I realize that when going through the edges, you generally have to make little slits in the corner, so this way when you're churning, the actual bare metal foil can conform to the bend a little bit more. So keep that in mind. I didn't do it for the first part here, and you see how it just bends up? Yeah, you kind of want to just cut little slits on the corners, and that helps it. So here I am just smoothing it out all throughout, trying to get it out. Again, first time ever using it, so I kind of want to be careful with it. So, but it works out. It worked out very, very well. And it was fun to work with. Surprisingly, to get the result that you want, it was a lot easier than I thought it would be. But again, I was very, very gentle with it. And procedure wasn't bad. There it is. I got it all on. And the next step here is taking that very sharp X-Acto blade and cutting the center of it. Now, you kind of want to not get it too close to the edges. Simply because you got to wrap that around on the inside. You got to wrap the foil around to the inside, creating that seal. So you want to get it close to the edges without getting it too close to the edges. I would leave like maybe a millimeter. Yeah, I guess. I don't know. Just a small bit. And you don't want it to crimple up, so you kind of let the knife guide you, using the weight of the knife to cut through. So, and it does cut very, very easily. See, it falls off right there. And you got to save all the extra bits. Okay. Again, there I am. On the insides, what you're doing is you're just wrapping it around. And with the extra pieces that I cut off from the window, I'm going to do the door handles. And I'm going to do the split window the exact same way. All right. So I'm not going to show you how to do those two. But look at the results on this, man. That's pretty awesome. Oh, yeah. Super happy that I discovered the bare metal foil. All right. Let's turn our attention back to the interior. And in the interior, what I decided to do is I'll turn on the lights, first of all. Those day flows are amazing. Use markers this time, because I've never tried it, to actually paint small bits on the inside dials of the interior. And I wanted to see what it would be like to actually Sharpie that. And there are some pluses and minuses. One of the pluses is that it's easy. And you don't have to worry about overloading your brush and letting it spill into areas that you don't want it to. So you have that control. And it does look pretty good. The metal one, you're kind of dicey. But then again, using metal on anything, it works out well enough to be an interior that you're not going to gawk at. But if it was like convertible, I wouldn't have done it this way. But it does leave a glossy sheen to it, so you may want to matte varnish it after you're done when you're working with markers. But all in all, I mean, it's not too bad. It serves its purpose. And there's the dials with the silver pieces on the inside. I did use some primer on the dials before I used the marker for the center pieces right there. And I think it came out well. Again, it looks a little more like the one-to-one model that has the black with the silver dials, and that's exactly how it is with the aluminum in the center. So there it is with steering wheel again. Steering wheel was also painted with the markers, and the actual base there of the center tube, center channel was done with a paintbrush. I used Vallejo paint for that, and you can see a difference. Not really. You can't really see a difference between the marker and the Vallejo paint. Say Vallejo. I'm at an R there where it doesn't belong. And for the purpose of this model, I think it came out well the way it was. So, job well done, I think. All right, next thing, I have to add my cartoony value to certain things. My miniature painting or fantasy painting to it. Here I'm going to take a Micron pen, and I'm going to mark the water line. That's what we're going to do first. And then I'm going to use several steps of wet blending to make the liquid that's going to fill the reservoir. Now, a lot of you purists are going to notice that this is not a realistic way of painting water lines. I know. I just wanted to have some cartoon fun with it, just because, adding my own signature to it. Now, you can do this differently, but this technique here, I've used it in other like miniature building applications, which I'll show you in a bit. So it does work in different modeling or hobby, I guess, hobby areas. And it's simply draw a line. Can be easier than that. It doesn't even have to be totally straight. Not for my purpose anyway. Some people will want it totally straight, but that's up to them. And then I use some Vallejo colors, and you can use any color you really want for this reservoir. I added some flow aid to that because I'm going to do some wet blending, so I kind of want to make it flow very well. And I want it to be very liquidy, I guess, if that's a word. My wife uses that word, liquidy. It's almost as bad as moist, but I don't know. Anyway, I'm starting with this light blue. I think it's sky blue from Vallejo. And yep, I lightly go in there. I just one coat. I primed it white with using that Stano Res white. And then I'm using this brush here, which is technically more of a dry brush I use for. But on this time, I only use that one for this application, large brush strokes. And then I used sky blue. The one was light blue, and then this sky blue. And I added that too. It's a little bit darker. So a little drop right there. A little variant there. And I guess those are the midtones. I'm going to add that there. And now normally when I do these stuff, I do it on a wet palette. But I'm using the bottom of a cap for a water bottle. So I recycled it. I'm trying to reuse those. And generally when I'm doing model cars where I want things to be very, very opaque, I kind of tend to use the caps more than when I'm miniature building, which then I would definitely use a wet palette, and that helps me do that as well. Now, I could spend the same amount of time on this car that I do for miniatures, but then I would have one of these builds per every 3 years. Yeah, no, that's not gonna happen. Maybe if I was gonna enter a contest, but I don't know. I don't think I am really. I might. I do want to. Here I come with the dark blue. There's a variant. I do want to build my painting techniques up to the point where I can enter competition, namely crystal brush, maybe a golden demon. And honestly, it would be my life's dream just to get a bronze. Like a bronze would be amazing. I don't want money, contest money or anything like that. I just want to achieve a level of painting where other artists can say, well, that was really cool, man. That's a really good job. And how'd you do that? And what was your technique for this? Or, stuff like that. And that would be awesome. If I could just do that once, it would be like, it's a life dream. So here I am wet blending some of the darker stuff, and it looks a little blotchy there. And that's because I have way too much paint on there. So come just take some of that off. There you go. Kind of blend it a little better. Because if you leave that stuff on, you'll get this super hard edge on the bottom, and you don't want to do that. Now, what I don't have on camera is that underneath, on the inside of the bottle, I also painted it that blue. So this way, when looking from underneath the car, you can actually see that as well. Yeah, just trying to wet blend it right there. Kind of infuse it. Have different kind of tones in there. I was always scared of wet blending. I still am a little bit. I don't think I've mastered it, so I'm going to have to use more wet blending in my models. So this way I can feel like I have it mastered, because I don't know if this wet blended very well. There's very little transition. Yeah. I guess I should have gone back and forth. If I had the wet palette, I would have done a better job with that. But, I mean, I think it looks pretty cool. Now let me just put the cap on there. And technically it's white, but yeah, I'm just having some fun with this. So blue cap it is. Blue. There you go. Yep. There it is. It's about as simple as you can get. Put another dot right there. That's just to fill it up. When you put a drop on it, it kind of forms a bubble. It kind of like settles into that bubble. That's what you're going for here. If you want that perfectly round circumference of the tip of anything. There it is. Bubble it out. I don't know how else to call it. Just overloading it, I guess. But there you go. Oh, man. A little anime-ish style or cartoonish style of water bottle. But, hey, you know what? This is my model, and I want to have some fun with it. Now, you can build it any way you want. But possibly just using a light mist on the bottom of the blue would give it that there's liquid inside the bottle, but the bottle isn't translucent kind of look. But I just went through this style because, to me it was fun. Now, I use this style for my Malifaux pieces here. I used it for the injection, I guess, the needle, where there's some kind of liquid in there, like a blood or something. And I used it for that. And also for this Malifaux model, I guess it's orderly. Yeah, he has a whole bunch of them. So I kind of use it on the bottoms for each one of those. And it worked out really well. I mean, I really like the way that kind of looks to the model. So this is something you can use and transfer. Okay, so I started with dry brushing and the battery ran out with me. I dry brushed a little bit of a silver paint from Vallejo and just really lightly went over to form scratches, not new scratches, but old scratches. And now I want to dirt it up. Now, here are some pastels. Now, these pastels I actually grinded myself from, I think it's Artist Loft. That's the brand of pastels that I used. And I have a video on how to grind down pastels as well. So you may want to take a look at that. And you don't want to lose a really great brush for this. Just one that you kind of dedicate towards it. I bought a multi-pack, and they have this fanning brush. And that's the brush that I kind of settled on as far as using dry brushing. I don't know, it just has a wide area. I went with it. There's no particular rhyme or reason, really. Just wanted to have an excuse to use that brush, I guess. And I'm not going to be feathering things in a while, so there you go. Basically, you put a whole bunch here, there, everywhere. It's rusty, it's dirty. I moved on to a bluish gray. Similarly, soot. That's what we're simulating here. And here I use a clay shaper, I guess it is. And it's a metal one. And just lightly just tap it with my finger and lay it down before I just weathered it by fanning it through and working it in the edges. Gave a real dusty kind of look, especially right there. And you want to kind of have that variance. You kind of want it to be not all brown, not all rusty, not all gray, but you want to see a depth. And the more you add to this, the more depth you're going to get. Now here's a dirt brown. So at some point I went mudding. So a little bit of rust, a little bit of soot, and now a little bit of dirt. And reserve that for a lot of the back end there. Again, you kind of want to have that multicolor effect where it's just settling in certain places, and you may want to consider how the vehicle is moving and then angle the dirt in those places. And I think the result comes out really well, and it's really quick, easy, and dirty way to do it. I'm going to put the engine into the compartment, see how it all looks together. So a lot of dry fitting with this engine, I'll tell you. Let's see, fits right in. That's great. Yeah, there it is. Still have to do those pipes though. I have not finished those pipes. I think that's what we're going to tackle next. Yep. So we finished that off. Not a lot of pieces to this model, but there's a lot of details to be done, Tamiya models generally have a whole bunch more. Like the exhaust system would be separate, and I'm pretty sure. Yep. So here it is. I glued it together. I added the water bottle in. I added a battery in. Same as the top of the water bottle where I put those dots effects. I did the same thing for the battery. I did a red connector for the positive. I left the black. I think I put a little glossy black, so this will be a little different. And now we're going to use electrical solder. Why do we use solder on a plastic? Well, we're not going to use it to solder things. We're actually going to use it for tailpipes. So we're going to cut a piece out. There it is. Try to cut it to length, a little over, a lot over to give me excess. That's for both pipes there. And then I kind of put the rest away. Now, the thing about these solder is that it's bendable. And it's hard enough that it's bendable, but you have to put a lot of pressure on it to bend it. So it's not going to bend by itself. Or if you just lightly touch it, it's not going to bend. But it will bend with pressure. Now, what I did was use a pin vise. Open it up right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to slip the piece that I want into the pin vise. And then I'm going to be able to bend it and manipulate it that way. This is a very, very, very small piece. So I took my time and slid it in there because it wouldn't fit with the chuck that was in there. So I kind of like had to take the top off to put it in there for this pin vise. Now, you may have another pin vise. If you don't have one, definitely something you should get for your modeling toolbox. They definitely come in handy. Okay, so I am bending it to fit, checking out what I need, what kind of angle bends, and then just with my fingers lightly, I'm just bending it. Simple as that. Look at the curvature. And you can do that. You can create your own manifolds with this kind of technique. You can use it on, I could see this application being used for a 40K model where you want to put pipes in the background coming down from like a spigot or something like that. You can actually do that using this solder. I mean, I think it's a great way to add pipes to your miniatures and bendable ways and look really realistic. I think therefore. So that electrical solder roll was definitely an investment. And one soldering piece, that should last you most of your modeling career, to be honest with you, because unless you're going to do these elaborate dioramas with very, very large pieces, you're really not going to be using too much of them. So there it is. It's on. It's not perfect, but I do want to make it look better. So in order to make it look better, I'm going to use Zap-A-Gap. And Zap-A-Gap is a form of a glue. You can use as glue. It's also a gap filler. I have a video about filling in gaps that is going to come probably next week while I'm working on the hex wraiths from Warhammer. So we're probably going to use the gap video and show you what kind of epoxies and putties to use for filling in gaps. Here I use a Tamiya application brush, Q-tip, I guess, cotton swab. And that really works best because it's hard and it's not too hard, and it has a little groove in it that you can actually put either paint or, in this case, filler, Zap-A-Gap, and you have all the control you ever need. And I'm just tapping it in there and letting it dry. Thing about using super glue for a filler is that before it dries completely, you can sand it, and get it nice and smooth, and then let it harden and dry completely, and then it comes out with this really smooth edge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the Zap-A-Gap in there. I'm going to let that dry, and then what I'm going to do is I am going to paint over it with that natural steel. There it is. And I'm going to unify the color there. So, pretty cool. Now time for the next one. All right, there it is. Now it's all done. And now I want to do some of the plumbing. Now, as far as references for the models, I went online and I just used Google, or you can use any search engine really, to search up images. Bing is another one you can use. Search up images. I put in 1963 Split Window Coupe engine bay, and they had some plumbing. Now here's a very, very large gauge wire, which has a lot of little wires in it that I got from, I believe it was Home Depot, or one of those big box stores will help you out with that. And I cut a small piece of it, so it was very inexpensive. And what you can do is, since there's copper in the middle of these, you can manipulate them as hoses. There you go. So you can use these as like rubber hoses. I use the black one here. You can use other colors depending on the application. But definitely, again, for your miniature bases, you can, if you want to use debris on the floor for a 40K model, I can see you using like a hose and using this and putting it down. Again, here it is, the 1-to-1 engine. I'm just doing the plumbing in there. There's this one hose that connects to the radiator, to the water pump. And that's what I'm emulating right here. So I'm hosing it up. I've got hose. Radiator hose, that is. And again, just bending it into place. I didn't use the pin vise for this one. I kind of just did it by hand. Well, I used this by hand and using this needle nose pliers just to bend it. I need an extreme bend there. So, and it worked out pretty well. Just cut it to bit, put a little bit of that Gorilla Glue. I used the gel form because I wanted more control. I didn't want it to go all over the place. And I wanted to protect the actual rubber outside of the sleeve. So I didn't want to get cloud up with a whole bunch of super glue and then have to start the process over again. So the gel one was definitely the optimal one to do. Yep. And it was really easy to work with. I mean, I did need to use tweezers in order to hold it and put it in place and then blow on it and make sure it dries. I did put the fan on for my spray booth here to help the process dry a little quicker. It took a bit of work, but it finally just settled into place, just moving it around. You want it to dry a little bit before you start manipulating it. And there we have it. There it is. It's hosed up. And it looks really close to that 1-to-1. I think it looks great. And then, aside from putting in the grill, I do need to put the hood on. Now, this is the part for AMT models that drove me crazy. Hoods and body fit were always terrible for me for AMT models when I built them as a kid as well. So I was actually scared. This is the most scared I've been. The interior was scary, but this even more so, the moment of truth. Now for the top pieces, I went for an aged look. So I kind of just used the non-oil on the grate. Now you can dry brush those, but I decided not to. I kind of like the darker look to it, the used look a little bit. So here's the moment of truth. Oh my goodness. It was so nerve-wracking for me to put this one piece in. I took my time. I didn't want to scratch the paint. I didn't want to crack it. I didn't want to bend it. And I was like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? I think it's the hardest part of the miniature for me. I mean, the model for me was definitely putting this hood on because it was just that nerve-wracking. Do I come in at an angle? Do I bend it? I finally decided on bending it. I said, let me go for it. If I break it, then I'm going to have to do a lot of different filming. But there, it snapped in. Oh my goodness. Now let's check the fit. Notoriously, these things do not fit as well as I want them to. And it didn't let me down. There seems to be a gap. I mean, it fits, but there's a little gap, I guess, at the top portion there. It just doesn't want to settle in. No, well. Bare metal foil in the split window coupe. It's pretty much done. Bare metal foil on the doors, as well as the windshield wipers. And is a nice way to open up the engine bay so you can take a look at the inside of it as well. And overall, I love this project. It was a lot of fun to build. Definitely a lot of fun to have you with me on this journey. Hope you enjoyed it yourself. And I mean, that's pretty much it. I'm going to go over to the photos and see so we can see what the finished product looks like. All right, here goes the finished photos. Well, I hope you enjoy this video. This car took me about 3 weeks to build. Our next build is going to go back into Warhammer and tackle on some miniatures. I was building the Let's Start box of the Malignants, and I hope I'm saying that right. And I hope you join me for that. Well, as always, if you like this video, click on that like button. If you want to see more videos coming up in the series, well then hit that subscribe button. And feel free to ask any questions or comments, anything miniature related, anything I can do to help the hobby. I will definitely aspire to do. So the best thing you can do for this channel is to share it with others, spread the word about the miniatures paintbrush, and we'll keep the community alive. Well, I'll see you next time on the miniatures paintbrush.